TCU lands a physical safety for the 2026 class in Bradley Brown.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox, been covering TCU athletics for the past 12 years. On today's show, we have a Big 12 schedule matrix for men's and women's basketball. What does that mean? So we don't have the dates or the times or anything like that yet, but we do know who TCU men's and women's hoops will play at home, who will they play on the road, and which three teams they will play twice in Big 12 conference play during that 18-game schedule. So we'll run that down in segments 2 and segments 3. Also a good time to just kind of reset and let you know what these rosters look like after a lot of movement in the transfer portal. But we start today with TCU recruiting. The Frogs land a safety out of Plano in Bradley Brown. He is 6 feet tall, 175 pounds. I'll get to the offer list and more in a moment. But first off, just good news to see some momentum on the recruiting front again for Sonny Dykes and this coaching staff. It had been a while since they had a commit. Now, earlier this week, on Monday, I talked about Vincent Johnson Jr., the tackle from Sulphur Springs, who is 6'5", 310 pounds. I think he's going to move to the interior offensive line, but a big-time blue-chip offensive lineman. They get him committed to the 2026 class. A few days later, Bradley Brown, a safety, also from the DFW area. Am I being a little generous by saying Sulphur Springs is in the DFW area? Maybe, but Plano definitely is. 6A player. He's coming to TCU, or at least is committed for the 2026 class. I ran down those measurables a minute ago. The offer sheet. He had an official visit to Missouri recently, according to Jeremy Clark. Also had offers from Cal, Houston, Kansas State, Michigan State. I believe he took an official visit to Michigan State as well. Pitt, Vandy, Texas Tech, Texas State, and a couple more schools that were also interested in his services. So a good win there for TCU. He's a 3-star prospect according to 247 Sports, and then they have the 247 composite ranking, which factors in all the industry rankings, and he is a 3-star player there as well. When you turn on the tape, though, and you watch the highlight film, you see a physical safety. Now, that doesn't mean that he can't cover people. I'm not saying that. In fact, the first clip that you see on his junior season highlights is an interception where he's playing center field. He tracks the ball well. He makes a play on it and doesn't take it for a pick six, but gets down pretty much into the red zone and sets up Plano with really good field position. Had another play in the Allen game where he should have had a pick, just kind of went through his hands, but he was right there in the right spot, read the quarterback's eyes well. A few other moments where he was locked up in one-on-one coverage and equipped himself well, had some pass breakups, had some good coverage that discouraged wide receivers from getting the ball. But the thing that stood out to me the most when I watched him, really good instincts in the run game, coming up, making tackles behind the line of scrimmage, tracking the ball carrier, avoiding blocks, shedding blocks, making tackles, very physical. Also, they would creep him up towards the line of scrimmage in more of a blitz situation. He did that well on all those kind of quick boundary wide receiver screens where, hey, it's one step, we're throwing the ball out there. It's essentially like a run play. We're just trying to get some positive yards with our receivers on the outside. Bradley was really good at using his hands, using his leverage to get off blockers, get past that wall, and found a way to make plays. His stats from last year as a junior, 69 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, at least 1 INT. Was also a state qualifier in the long jump and the 200 as well. So a track athlete, which you would expect for somebody who's really good on the football field. An underrated departure that I think is going to show up in a big way, especially the first few weeks of the season for TCU this upcoming year, is Abe Kamara is moving on, and Bradley Brown is not coming in as his replacement immediately. Now, he'll get a fair shake at it. Like if he comes in and just makes a bunch of plays in a couple of years, then yeah, maybe he does play as a freshman. But I think it's interesting to look at now. This is year 2 of Andy Avalos, his second recruiting cycle that he's been able to truly work on. And really 2026 is his first recruiting cycle that he's been the guy from start to finish and is sort of laying the foundation for what he wants this defense to be. We've seen a huge emphasis with this class on edge rushers and defensive linemen. He dips into the secondary here. Kamara was a big physical corner, almost kind of like a hybrid linebacker in this 3-3-5 scheme. He brought the wood, he brought the physicality, had a silly targeting penalty. And I say silly in that I thought it was silly that it got called, not that he made a bad decision. Had a huge hit in that Kansas game on an option play. I see similar traits when I watch Bradley Brown. Also, this is the first real recruiting win for Trey Watson, the new safeties coach who came over from Cal. But my point is this. You're replacing Abe Kamara this year. Maybe it's Austin Jordan, the Texas transfer, Kylan Jackson from LSU. I think he'll get a shot as well. If I had to guess today to start the season, I think Austin Jordan's going to be the man. You also have Bud Clark and Jamel Johnson, two very experienced players who also are not afraid to stick their nose in there and make plays, but are more apt at being your typical cover corners. Brown fits the mold of that physical safety you need who can make plays around the line of scrimmage, come up and be a factor as an extra pass rusher in the blitz game, but also can step back and play center field, can make some plays on the ball and do some things there. Another thing that stood out to me, I don't know how often he did this at Plano. I'll try to pay better attention this year. There was one or two clips on the highlight tape where you see him coming down on kickoff and making sure tackles. Now, you have to watch it, and I know I'm projecting a ways out because he has got a senior season of high school, and then assuming that he signs, he'll be at TCU. But he would run down there with some abandon. And since he's used to coming downhill and making plays in the run game and knows how to use his body, use his leverage, get off blockers, use angles, and just his speed and athleticism to run past guys, I think that's a place where he could fit in the immediate as well, even if he's not getting consistent reps at safety. Put him on the kickoff team, have him run down, use that speed, that frame, that athleticism to make plays on special teams could be really beneficial for this TCU team. Overall, though, I like this pickup. He seems to fit the bill for what TCU wants from that hybrid safety position. And when we talk about the run game struggles from last year on defense, I spent a lot of time, especially the first month of the season, being very critical of the defensive line. I'm not going to totally admonish them from criticism in that way. I do believe the defensive line got pushed off the ball a lot in that first month of the season. I think they're in a better place now, led by Marcus Deal, especially in the interior, which is really what I'm kind of focusing on now. But somebody pointed out to me after the UCF game, and I tried to pay better attention to it the rest of the year, and I started to see their point. Yes, the D-line issues were apparent, and when you get knocked off the ball, this part of the game gets tougher, but the run fits from the linebackers and safeties were just atrocious at times. What's a run fit? Well, that's the instincts. It's the instincts. It's also reading keys. Linebackers and safeties, when they're coming up trying to make plays, they're trying to fill in the gaps. In most cases, you're going to be outnumbered along the defensive line. So there are more offensive linemen in the block than there are defensive linemen on the line of scrimmage. What does that mean? You need people on the second and third level of your defense to come up and fill the B gap, fill the C gap, be able to set the edge, keep that outside shoulder free, turn the running back inside, and limit that space, limit that open area to move and maneuver in. TCU was very bad at that early in the year. And that was one of the major reasons why their defense when it came to the run game was so bad early in the season. You also look back at the Baylor game, and there were some injuries there along the D line, but there were a couple of those Bryson Washington runs where, yeah, the defensive line doesn't do a great job of holding their end of the bargain and being up, reestablishing the line of scrimmage, but also your linebackers and safeties are just running towards ghost and don't seem to have a great feel for where the ball's going, where they need to be, and how to either make the tackle themselves or force that running back into the cavalry by making them change direction or plant their foot in the ground and try to cut back inside instead of getting to the outside and getting open space. But Bradley Brown, safety from Plano, he's the latest to commit. Some good momentum lately here on the recruiting trail for this TCU coaching staff, which is good to see because, as I mentioned, it's been a little while, or had been a little while before the end of last week since they had a commitment. Nice to see those official visit weekends that they've been putting the work in towards have paid off pretty quickly. When we come back, we know what the Big 12 schedule looks like for TCU men's basketball. We also know what this roster is going to be next season. Make or break year for Jamie Dixon. We'll talk about it next on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Bills, man, you can't mess with it. And your money, you may relate to the story. You open up your bank account, you're like, where the heck did all my money go? What am I spending this on? What recurring payments are coming out? Dinner with friends, right? It all adds up. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app, but that's a huge feature of what they do. It allows you to make that budget. It allows you to plan. Another thing that Monarch Money, though, does is it's an all-encompassing wealth management center. So you can track your investments. You can figure out where you need to move your funds to make sure that you're covered at the first of the month when those bills come out. Go to monarchmoney.com and use code LOCKEDONCollege for 50% off your first year. That's half off your first year at monarchmoney.com when you use the code LOCKEDONCollege. Monarch Money, take control of your finances today. So the Big 12 released their schedule matrix for men's and women's basketball on Thursday. What does that mean? Well, we still don't know dates and times yet, but we now know who TCU's opponents are going to be in conference play. We know who they're playing at home, who they're playing on the road, and which teams they'll have a home and home with and will play twice during the course of the conference season. So on the men's side, the three teams that you're playing twice: Baylor, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State. This league is a meat grinder. It's going to be tough. I feel like that's a pretty good draw if you're talking about the three teams that you want to see twice. Oklahoma State going into year 2 of a new coach. That might have been the craziest win of the year for TCU. I guess aside from the Tech game, which was very unexpected, but that buzzer beater, almost buzzer beater that they hit at the end of the ball game on a wild three. Yeah, that was a cool moment in Shalimar Arena and a bright spot in a season that had some rough times as well. Baylor, they've kind of had their number on the road. Now at home, it's been a little bit of a different story, but they haven't lost at Foster Pavilion yet. Jamie won the last year. They went to the Farrell Center on a big-time Chuck O'Bannon 3. They won last year. Brendan Wenzel hit a huge corner 3 to end that game. So they've done a nice job against the Bears as of late. And then Kansas State, they recently landed PJ Haggerty in the transfer portal. If that name sounds familiar to you, well, PJ Haggerty started his career at TCU. Then he transferred to Tulsa. Then he transferred to Memphis. And now he's going to play at Kansas State. And this dude can fill it up. He can score. So you would imagine that's going to be a tougher game than it was last year. But Kansas State's another team, even with the success that Jerome Tang has had there. TCU's equipped themselves pretty well through the past couple of years against K-State. The rest of the schedule, the teams that the Frogs will be playing at home: Arizona State, Iowa State, Houston, Cincinnati, West Virginia. My initial reaction to that's a tough home slate, but avoiding going to Ames, Iowa and getting the Cyclones at home, big win. avoiding having to make the trip to West Virginia and Morgantown and getting them at home. Big win. Getting Houston at home. You prefer that to going on the road and playing the Cougars there. So some good things. I mean, same story with Arizona. You prefer to play them at home than on the road. Your away schedule, UCF, Colorado, Kansas, Texas Tech, Utah, BYU. So some tough environments there. Allen Fieldhouse, the Fog, always a tough environment. BYU has a great crowd. They're going to be even more juiced up this season. Texas Tech, good atmosphere there. So that'll be difficult. But overall, I think they fare pretty well with the schedule. Now, let me say this about the TCU men's basketball team. I'm starting to talk myself into it. And I don't know if there's a program. I mean, I hate to say this. I'm not sure there's another program on campus that people just kind of feel more blasé about than TCU men's hoops right now. There's just kind of a general consensus of like, well, they've reached their ceiling under Jamie Dixon. A couple of years in a row where things have been disappointing, even though they did make the tournament 2 years ago. They just ended up getting blasted by Utah State. And then last year they did not make the postseason at all. I liked what they did in the transfer portal though. Brock Harding, a true like pass first point guard from Iowa who's coming off a good season. Jaden Pierre, a volume scorer. I'm a little worried about him being your number one option, but he is a dude that can fill it up and did that at Providence in the Big East last year and did it really well. Tanner Toolson has some bounce to his game, but also can shoot the rock. And that's really the biggest thing in my mind. They added players who can space the floor and can shoot, which was the biggest weakness of this team the last couple of years. Latarius Leviticus, they call him LT, from Lithuania, and played his first couple of years of college ball at Oregon State before transferring to TCU. He can be more of a stretch four guy for you. I mean, he can shoot the three. Your kind of typical big, tall, very skilled European big man who has the ability to score from more than just, 5 feet inside the paint. And then your returners, one more transfer I should mention, Vinay Salachum from Florida International, who averaged almost a double-double in 32 minutes last season. And man, that's a skilled big man offensively. Like he knows how to finish around the rim. He's got a little bit of a step back jumper. He stepped into a couple threes last year. I'm not sure what the defensive prowess is, but he looks like a guy that can go score for you down low. And honestly, I mean, it's been a long time since TCU had a player like that. Eddie Lampkin at times was that type of dude, even though I think Eddie's best attribute was his passing on offense and just the energy he brought to the floor. But he could score the rock. Salachum feels like a different level from a skill talent perspective, though. And I like his chances to be a scorer for this TCU team. And then you got some returners who you're banking on to take the next step. David Punch did some really cool things last season. Great athlete, man. Can just go, can play above the rim. So having him back is a welcome sight. Jace Posey, you need him to step into a bigger role. I love the intangibles he brings to the table. He plays good defense. I think he makes winning plays. He made big shots last year at times, and he's a winning player. Now, you need him to go from dude who can give you good minutes off the bench from time to time to a legitimate scoring threat. Kind of take maybe more of a Micah Peavy role later in his career, but that opportunity is going to be there for him. Caden Bug Edwards, a freshman that we're all super excited about from Duncanville, he'll get a chance to take on some of that scoring load right away. Ashton Simmons, combo guard, point guard, he'll get his opportunities to get some playing time for sure. RJ Jones, who was a very highly rated recruit out of high school, spent a couple of years at Kansas State, didn't really see the floor, decides to come back home and play at TCU. Again, they've got some guys who can shoot and can create their own shot In my mind, that was their biggest weakness over the last few years. So I like the fact that they addressed it in the transfer portal. It's got to come together. You have to execute, and there's not a lot of time to figure it out. As always, you're playing tough teams in the Big 12. I like the makeup of this team, though, going into the offseason program. When we come back, what's the women's schedule look like? We'll talk about that next round. Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day. If you haven't checked out the Portal podcast yet, please do that. Brian Smith, our recruiting expert, he covers the transfer portal nationwide and just recruiting in general, recruiting trends. He ranks the coaches. If you're into that, if you're jonesing for some recruiting news or just want some interesting takes and opinions about the recruiting industry, then check out the Portal podcast. It's part of the Locked On Network. I ran down the men's schedule in the last segment. Mark Campbell, year 3. Expectations are going to be high, coming off a Big 12 championship, regular season and tournament championship. Also coming off an Elite 8 appearance. What's the follow-up? Olivia Miles, the big prize they landed in the transfer portal. The teams you're playing both, Baylor, Houston, West Virginia. Baylor and West Virginia, really good women's basketball teams. I'm hopeful that this Baylor thing becomes a rivalry. And I know the coaches are going to be respectful about it. I mean, Nikki Collin and Mark Campbell, when they've talked about each other's programs, they've said all the right things over the past few years. But that was a cool atmosphere in Waco where TCU went down there and won the Big 12 title on the last day of the regular season. They take them down to the Big 12 championship game. I mean, I know it's not Kim Mulkey there anymore, but that's been the program that has run the conference for the past 2 decades. So to slay that giant and get the job done, win a conference title, I think that was a huge confidence boost for this TCU team. I'm excited to see how these schools battle it out moving forward. So the teams are going to play twice: Baylor, West Virginia, and Houston. Your road schedule: BYU, Cincinnati, Colorado, Texas Tech, UCF, and Utah. Your home schedule: Arizona, Arizona State, Iowa State, Kansas, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State. So another good opportunity for TCU women's basketball to build on what they did last season. It'll be tougher. There's expectations now, right? You're not the new kids on the block. You're not the team that's sneaking up on everybody and has a chip on your shoulder to prove yourself. I hope they still have a chip on their shoulder, but they're going from the hunters to the hunted. So that's a big adjustment, but it's also a brand new roster. And so it's kind of hard to tell how much, if any, pressure there will be on this group. The big get in the transfer portal, Olivia Miles, who was the consensus number 2 pick in the WNBA draft. At least that's what all the mock drafts were saying. She decides to leave Notre Dame, to stay in school for 1 more year, and lands at TCU to play for Mark Campbell. They were posting some highlights from the first couple of days of practice. Both teams are getting an opportunity to go through some work during the summer. And Miles had this really cool between the legs pass on the run. I think it was to I forget which player it was, but it was one of the bigs, and they finished around the rim, which was good to see. If you haven't watched Olivia Miles play, she can score. Like, she's definitely someone who can fill up the stat sheet by scoring the rock. But the most electric part of her game, she is a willing passer. She's a flashy passer. She'll drop a no-look dime. She'll go behind her back. She'll go between her legs. So for Clara Silva, for Marcia Suarez, I mean, you got to be able to roll to the rim, catch the ball, and finish. That's the big challenge. And I think the offense will look a little different this year because Haley Van Lith, now the point of landing Haley and the plan that Mark pitched to her was, hey, we're going to get you back to being more of a true point guard, being a distributor. But when it came down to it in crunch time, like Haley Van Lith wanted the ball. She was the one that was going to create the shots and usually take it herself. Miles is more of a willing passer. So I'm interested to see what this offensive system looks like with more of a true point guard. handling the rock. Donovan Hunter's coming back. Taylor Bigby. You also have Maddie Shear, who had to sit out last year with an injury. And she was one of the big transfer portal pieces they landed a couple off seasons ago, along with Haley Van Lith from Kentucky. So we'll get to see her in action this upcoming season. I'm super excited about both these teams, but women's basketball especially. It's going to be fun to see how Mark Campbell follows up such a great run last season. We'll be back on Monday. It's Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available there.